Number 10, Starbrand. Starbrand isn't so much a singular person as it is a power in and of itself. Right now, the current Starbrand in the 616 universe is Brandy Selby, daughter of Suzanne Selby, who became the Starbrand after the one before her, Kevin Connor, passed away. The Avengers stepped in and had to help Suzanne deliver little Brandy, an act that caused Suzanne to pass away and attach the Starbrand to Brandy. Since Brandy's birth, she's used the Starbrand to fly and survive without oxygen and in the vacuum of space, and she can use extremely powerful energy blasts that can take down multiple people at once. But the Starbrand itself is an incredible source of power, proven by other people who have wielded it. The bearer of Earth 723's Starbrand used the power to create music that can influence human behavior to the extent that he has unified the people of his world as a single hive mind. On Earth 541, the Starbrand bearer has conquered his world and installed himself as the head of a benevolent monarchical dictatorship, but like a good one that actually somehow works despite the lack of freedoms. Number 9, Mantis. Mantis actually got her start in comics when she used her abilities to reform Swordsman or Jacques Duquesne, which actually got her into the Avengers. Mantis's powers and abilities are more than what you may have gathered from her film counterpart. Mantis has complete control over her body, which in turn gives her peak human agility, the ability to accelerate healing through force of will, and an empathic nature, enabling her to communicate telepathically with and sense the emotions of others as psychic vibrations. She can also control her heart and respiratory rate and blood flow. Her master of the Kotati priest's martial arts, which focuses on the manipulation of nerve endings and pressure points, has enabled her to knock out beings as powerful as Thor, and her telepathic and empathic abilities are improved upon thanks to her 2 little antennae she has coming out of her head. It doesn't stop there though. Mantis also gained abilities when she merged with the Kotati, such as being able to communicate with both plants and animals and survive in space in a physically solid energy form. She can transfer herself from plant life to plant life across interstellar distances or dimensions, creating a new body from the plant life where she ends up. She can transmit and receive telepathic impressions, she has precognitive powers, and more recently she can fire powerful pyrokinetic energy blasts, form energy shields, communicate directly with cosmic beings such as eternity and death, and completely control her personal energies as well as her physical form.
Number 8, Firestar. Angelica Jones made her comic book debut in Uncanny X-Men 193. She was born with, well, as you would guess by her name, the ability to generate great heat. Cerebro found her, but the Hellfire Club got to her moments before. She was learning a lot under the White Queen's guidance, honestly, unaware of the cruel nature of the club, of course. See, Frost actually gave her the nickname Firestar. So then Firestar joined as a reserve member in Avengers Volume 3, Issue 4. Yeah, so Hawkeye demanded that one of the 2 new members that they're recruiting has to be Firestar. He announced it to the world prematurely. He was that confident. The other members are like, whoa, let's hold on a second here, because that spot that we had open was actually for you, Hawkeye. But they settled on reserve member. That's fine, that's good enough. Now cut to issue 7, the former X-Men member became a full Avengers member. Firestar was also amongst the lucky 198 mutants to have kept their abilities after the Scarlet Witch decimated the mutant population. Number 7, Whizzer. This dude was only an Avenger for 4 years in the comics, but he's funky enough to mention. I feel like we don't talk about Whizzer enough. Robert Frank Sr. made his first appearance in USA Comics 1, and after a run-in with a cobra, he was bitten and his father had to use mongoose blood to try and save him the old-fashioned way, where he sucks the poison out. Some wives' tale, and it surely worked, but his father had a heart attack during this do-it-yourself transfusion and bit the bullet. Robert, on the other hand, was blessed with super speed after this, and then he became the Whizzer. Great name, great name. He joined the Avengers in issue 173 back in 1978, but he met his fate and vision in the Scarlet Witch issue 2 in 1982. Number 6, Demolition Man. Dennis Murphy, born in Detroit, Michigan. He looked up to superheroes quite a bit, as do most of us. He was actually great at football, but he wasn't great enough to be recruited professionally. Sad times. But then that's when the power broker comes in to strike up a bargain. Super strength ought to help you with those home games, right, Dennis? Let's do it. Well, what happened was he got so strong that if he did decide to play football with these humans, he would probably break through them. His name is Demolition Man. Nobody would expect this guy to be an Avenger because he wasn't even the best football player. That's like what Peter Parker says. He's like, I couldn't do stuff then, so I can't do stuff now. You know? He joined the Avengers in Captain America issue 349. He helped Battlestar and US Agent free Captain America, and when US Agent and Flag Smasher started to get a little distracted, D-Man himself finished the mission properly. Number 5, Lightning. Living lightning, here we go. It's hard to imagine that a man made of lightning would ever not get the spotlight. But that's what happens when you share the pages with this team. Lightning, aka Miguel Santos, first came into comics as a villain, actually, but he joined the West Coast Avengers in issue 74. Now, his father, cut to way before, his father was part of this group called the Legion of Living Lightning, or LOL, as some would say. And when they tried to gain control of the Hulk, which is a terrible idea, his father was killed in action. Again, terrible idea, don't fight the Hulk. So Miguel wanted to learn more of his father in the Legion, so he broke into the Legion's headquarters, and while he was snooping around, one of the machines turned on, and he turned into a living energy. Now, he almost joined the Great Lakes Avengers at one point, but only because he thought GLA meant Gay Lesbian Alliance. I don't think Great Lakes are as exciting, but you never know. We have one over here, it's Lake Ontario. It's way too cold and smelly. No. I would much rather Gay Lesbian Alliances. The team had the worst luck when it came to recruits. Let's just say that. Number 4, Stingray. Walter Newell made his comic book debut in Tales to Astonish issue 95. Now, his life began as an oceanographer and an engineer, and once he created a suit built for deep sea exploration, a cool nickname was bound to come afterwards. Stingray, there it is, that's a cool nickname. He was ordered to bring in Namor to investigate the disappearance of water from our oceans. He ended up working with Namor numerous times, Water Bros for life, and then he joined the team as a reserve member in the Avengers issue 319. Funny enough, in the Armor Wars storyline, Iron Man wanted to recover all these suits that had Stark tech in it. So he comes in, knocks out Stingray, and then after attaching the Negator pack, nothing happened. So the suit was indeed not stolen. You know, it's always nice when you knock someone out for no reason. I'd love to see him make an appearance in the Armor Wars Disney show, but I think we need a lot of other stuff first before we even look at Stingray. Although he is cool. Number 3, Jack of Hearts. Jonathan Hart, son of Philip Hart, a brilliant scientist who developed a liquid called Zero Fluid, and his mother was actually part of the Contraxian race. Now, the alien woman was also a scientist sent to discover this energy source to help their dying Contraxian son. Now, the alien lady heard about Philip Hart's experiments, so they met, got married, and then out came Jack. And then later on, when Jack was a teenager, his father had completed the Zero Fluid, but was sadly killed by the agents of a criminal corporation who wanted the fluid for themselves to market it. Classic bad guy stuff. Give us your fluids, let's fight. So when Jack hid in his father's lab, he was covered in said Zero Fluid, and then he started to glow and change and become more powerful, becoming the Jack of Hearts. Energy was just oozing out of his body. He handled his father's killers easily after that. He then joined the Avengers in Volume 3, Issue 43. Number 2, not one, but 2 guns. He's got 2 guns, the 2-gun kid. Let's talk about him. Of course, we can't forget this rootin' tootin' Avenger. Look out, gang, here he comes. Matt Hawk joined the team in Avengers 142. This guy's fun. Now, the cover alone, let's talk about this. The Avengers versus the wild Western heroes of all. Let's go. I'm gonna read this right now. He was a Harvard-educated Boston lawyer who settled in 1870s Tombstone, Texas, after the Civil War. Like the Civil War, not Civil War, like the Civil War. You get it? I don't really have to pitch what his life was pre-Avengers. I mean, there's horses, there's shooting, there's lots of nice boots. One day he saved the life of this elderly man. He was getting picked on by a rootin' tootin' gang. But this man just happened to be legendary gunslinger Ben Dancer. It's Ben Dancer. So Ben is exactly what you'd imagine in your head. I read all of his lines in Sam Elliott's voice because, well, of course I did. Look at him. So he, of course, trained Matt, and then when the Avengers fought Kang back in that era, so once the dust had settled, literally, the dust had settled, the 2-gun kid came back to the modern era with the team. And Hawkeye had a pretty good time as well. This is when he started to dig the West Coast life. He wanted to leave the Avengers because being a bow and arrow man made more sense to be out there than Manhattan. I have to agree. And finally, number 1, we can't forget about him, the Forgotten One. Gilgamesh made his first appearance in Eternals issue 13. He was born before the Ice Age, and in 3000 BC, the Eternal became Gilgamesh, king of Uruk in Sumeria. In ancient times, he would wander the earth battling tyrants and taking down beasts. He would fight alongside Hercules, and he even took down the demon dragon Zeus. He fought for the Roman Empire as a centurion, just taking out tribes left and right, and then he joined the Avengers in issue 300. And currently, he works alongside Hercules and the gods of war. Now, I feel like we're gonna see this guy soon in the MCU. I mean, the Eternals movie, Thor, Love and Thunder, bringing in some gods. The Forgotten One, no more. I have a feeling.
At number 10, we have Cersei. A member of the Eternals, Cersei has been perfecting her craft for tens of thousands of years and has spent a decent amount of time as an Avenger. First introduced in the Eternals number 3, she ends up officially joining the Avengers in Avengers number 314. Some say she joins out of interest in protecting the world and its inhabitants from harm, but others say it's because she's in love with Captain America. Regardless, without even considering her strength yet, her invulnerability already is impressive enough, it's understood that the only way to kill Cersei is by reducing her to atoms and scattering them throughout the cosmos. And on top of this is her impressive ability known as transmutation, which allows her to change the molecular structure of her targets, which is a pretty fun power. Anywhere from turning enemies into jelly to disintegrating air itself to creating sentient life out of nothing, Cersei just had to appear on this list. At number 9 is Vision. Now, if you're more familiar with the MCU than the comics, you may know Vision as more of a tragic character, but Vision is anything but that in the comics, from his power levels to his unique origin story. In Avengers number 57, Vision is still created by Ultron, but his body is formed using Horton cells to replace human anatomy, and his consciousness is made to replicate that of Wonder Man and a little bit of Alex Lipton. Then once he sets off to tear apart the Avengers, he disobeys his orders and instead joins them, becoming one of the leading members as a result. And it's quite the acquisition for the Avengers because Vision is widely considered one of the most powerful of all time. For example, that one time when he increases his density and turns himself into a meteorite to take out Nefaria in Avengers number 166, or how he proves his worthiness of Mjolnir in the MCU, which is a huge moment for any hero, especially in AI. He's also got his extremely powerful energy blasts, his incorporeal form that he can use on command, and immortality. If he isn't ever destroyed, he will basically survive as long as his parts get repaired every once in a while. And plus, he's just a very pragmatic hero, capable of using heightened intelligence to keep emotions out of every decision he makes.
Number 8. Avenger X. Cressida made her debut in Avengers Volume 7, Issue 2. When the Avengers got help from the X-Men to track down the Stranger, Professor X helped by using Cerebro to direct them to northern Thailand, where they rescued a local woman named Cressida from the cosmic being. Now, she had this ability that could amplify the Avengers. They all got super jacked up, and even Cap said that he felt stronger. He felt like he could take on a full army. He's jumping higher, throwing 10 times harder. It's wild. When Scarlet Witch asked how she did that, she says she doesn't really know, but she feels sorry doing it. But the downside of her powers were kept hush-hush from Wanda. See, in order to empower them, she had to drain the life of everybody else in the village. And in the next issue, she was deemed an Avenger. She was given the tour, the whole thing. Welcome aboard. But meanwhile, while this is going on, at Sunshine Nursing Home, the same thing was happening to those who got the life drained from the village. Powerful team member, but maybe a little bit too dark. Number 7. Squirrel Girl. On to something a little bit more bright, let's go on to Doreen Green. She made her comic book debut in Marvel Superheroes Volume 2, Issue 8, back in the early 90s. She was born with these fantastic squirrel-like abilities, tail included. She learned she could communicate with squirrels at just age 10. Now, this sounds like a fairy tale so far, but don't let the tail fool you. She packs an incredible punch. For example, in an early comic, she took on Dr. Doom. In Marvel Superheroes Issue 8, she bumps into Stark, gives him a run for his money in order to prove how powerful she is, and then she shows Tony her powers. She jumps, she hops, she climbs all around. It's pretty impressive. Squirrels start coming in from everywhere, and then all of a sudden they're commanded to jump onto Tony. And then Dr. Doom came and interrupted the whole thing. He jammed Stark's electronics, and in order to save Tony, she sent that horde of squirrels onto the Doom ship. It was amazing. And then voila, Stark is free thanks to the insane squirrel posse. Then the squirrels get down to Doom, and then he leaves. He taps out. He's like, I don't want anything to do with this. This is way too much for me. Guy straight up ran away. Doreen later joined the US Avengers on their 2017 run. Number 6, Sandman. Believe it or not, Sandman was once an Avenger. William Baker made his comic book debut in 1963 with The Amazing Spider-Man issue 4. And yeah, sure, most of the time the Sandman is considered a villain, but that's why we have to mention this small change of heart, because even bad guys, it's possible to change. It happens. He bumped into the Thing, a similar looking guy, you know, being big and beige and big and all. So they had a little chat about life and how to use your abilities maybe for the greater good. So we started to help Spider-Man a bit here and there, and then in Avengers issue 329, Captain America announced a new Avengers team, and on that roster was Sandman. He was one of the 7 reserve members. He of course didn't last long because, well, he was a reserve member for one, and coming from the villain side already, I'm sure he wasn't too committed. How great would that have been if the good guys had a sand dude? Wouldn't that be great? We could use the sand guy. Number 5, triathlon slash 3D man. Okay, 3D man slash triathlon, aka Delroy Garrett Jr. He joined the team in Avengers Volume 3, Issue 27. He showed up and just whooped everybody's ass. It was great. The team basically had to hire him on the spot. They had no choice. But before this, he grew up running, hence his name Triathlon. He competed in the Olympic Games and he was crushing it. That was until he tested positive for steroids. Then he got his 3 medals. taken away from him. So he turned to religion, to the triune understanding, and the group's founder, Jonathan Tremont, had found a fragment of a mysterious object and used it to give Garrett the powers of 3D Man, the 3D Man himself. Look out. I would see a 3D Man movie in 3D. God, what a ride that would be. You just don't put on the glasses and you don't see half the movie. You're like, oh, I get it. It's cool. It's cool. Number 4, US Agent. Okay, spoilers coming in hot for Falcon and the Winter Soldier. If you haven't watched it yet, pause this video, watch the entire series, and then come back and click play. It's easy. John Walker is known for being the hothead that replaces Captain America in the show and in the comics. He went as far as injecting super soldier serum into his own body, but he didn't become Steve Rogers. Instead, he killed a guy with the Captain America shield. It's kind of brutal. And by the time the show ends, the shield is back in the hands of Captain America, Sam Wilson, and Walker becomes US Agent, officially. The suit's black, so it's, official and all. And in the comics, he eventually joined the ranks of the West Coast Avengers, and it feels like this is where the Avengers are going in the MCU currently. Because in the comics, when Hawkeye moved to the West Coast and set up an Avengers team there, the government wanted to put somebody official, kind of out of the superhero loop, in there just to make sure things are going smoothly. Now at this time, the Vision was also a bit of a problem, so that move made sense. So they sent in US Agent. Now with Vision being white in the MCU, I feel like they're kind of heading there. This is getting good. It's getting tricky. Number 3, Hawkeye. I have to mention Hawkeye because he's one of the 1960s Avenger recruits, and he's one of the big 6 in the MCU, and I feel like he doesn't get enough credit on screen still. Like in the comics, he becomes Goliath. It's epic. When the West Coast Avengers were assembled, Hawkeye was the leader of the team, like I said. But for a little bit, that wasn't until they thought the US Agent would be a better replacement for leadership. So he ended up coming in and then taking over as the new leader. So things get a little wonky. So Hawkeye thought, no sweat. I'll get some Pym particles and we'll see who the biggest guy is after all. And then he became this. Number 2, the Sentry. He made his first appearance in Sentry issue 1. Meet Robert Reynolds. He was a struggling addict who made his way into a laboratory and discovered something called the Golden Sentry Serum. So he consumed it, and then he got the surprise of a lifetime when he was given the power of 1,000,000 exploding suns. So back in 1947, Project Sentry was put together by the remnants of the US Operation Rebirth and Canada's Department K. They joined forces and they wanted to recreate the super soldier serum, but they magnified its effects 100,000 times. That plus a cool outfit in the mix, and now we have a new superhero. So after this, Robert fought alongside the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, and of course, the New Avengers. He's a really powerful guy. He once became a Horseman of Apocalypse. He was the Horseman Death. And then he ended up going crazy because he thought he was the heir of Apocalypse. It was a whole thing. It was crazy. And finally, number 1, Hercules. Of course, we can't forget the son of Zeus. Come on, the king of the Olympian gods, another 60s recruit, Hercules. He made his first Silver Age appearance in Journey into Mystery Annual issue 1 in 1965, and in Avengers issue 45, he and the rest of the team went against the Super Adaptoid. And right after the dust had settled, Hercules was standing with the team, expressing how bright the sun doth shines. Somebody even put his name on a sign. That's how you know it's official. As soon as a 19-year-old starts painting your name on it like a Katy Perry concert, bam, you made it. So with Russell Crowe reportedly cast as Zeus in the next Thor installment, we may be closer to Hercules than we think. Kicking off the list at number 10, Wasp. Sometimes size matters. I mean, the Incredible Hulk can eat a car and then squish another car and toss it across San Francisco. That's awesome. But sometimes size doesn't necessarily matter. Janet Van Dyne may be small, but just like Ant-Man, she packs a mean punch. She made her first debut back in Tales to Astonish issue 44, and in the early 60s, she became a founding member of the Avengers. After her soon-to-be husband, Hank Pym, genetically altered her and gave her the ability to shrink down using Pym particles. She was also given biosynthetic wings implanted in her back to help her fly around while she fires bioelectric energy stings at bad guys. Donning the nickname the Wasp, she became Ant-Man's partner, and fans are excited that the release date being announced last week, we now get Ant-Man's third movie, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, and it hits theaters February 2022. So in the MCU, Janet is finally an Avenger post-Endgame, and in Avengers issue 1, well, she was already on the roster. Number 9, Black Knight. Dane Whitman made his comic book debut in Avengers issue 48. He inherited his uncle Garrett's castle and had no idea that his uncle was the villain, the Black Knight. He found the Ebony Blade and passed its test, becoming the new Black Knight. He then decided to join the Masters of Evil like his uncle did, but he was going in undercover. He was on the good side, so he wanted to help the Avengers, but they still needed more. They didn't trust him quite enough yet. In Avengers issue 71, funny enough, titled Endgame, Dane joins the Avengers. Well, kind of. Like I said, they didn't trust him so much until he helped fight Kang the Conqueror, and then they were like, okay, he's cool, come on aboard. He's an excellent swordsmith, so much so that he's beaten the swordsmith in combat. And that sword that he uses as well grants him immunity to magical powers. Plus the dude rides a winged horse, an underrated Avenger for sure.
Number 8. Tigra. When Greer Nelson first came on the scene, she was just known as the Cat and was given powers tied to her costume. But that all changed when she became Tigra, mutating into a human-tiger hybrid in a ritual that bound her to the Cat People, which is a very silly name, but was a race of humanoid cats who were created in the Middle Ages. Now before you laugh at her for looking kinda silly, just know that in her tiger form, Tigra is granted some awesome abilities. Her superhuman strength allows her to lift over 10 tons, with her leg muscles allowing her to perform a standing jump of 12 feet. She can run at speeds of around 70 miles per hour, has superhuman durability, agility, reflexes, and stamina, and as we all know, cats have heightened senses and like to knock things off of where you carefully place them. And as far as I know, the former is the same with Tigra, whose senses are about 10 times that of a human. Tigra's eyesight can sense the infrared portion of the electromagnetic spectrum, allowing for night vision. She can more easily detect the movements of an opponent. Her hearing is so strong that she can detect a ball of tissue paper being dropped at a distance of 40 feet, and her sense of smell lets her track people. More than that, she can even detect subtle alterations in the composition of perspiration that reflects mood or emotions and is highly sensitive to pheromones. Her claws and fangs can cut through steel, and like Mantis, she is an empath able to enhance and control emotions to a degree. Number 7. Monica Rambeau. With the title of Captain Marvel, it's easy to not fully understand the powers of Monica Rambeau, but they are different to her other Captain Marvel counterparts, and in my opinion, she is my favorite of the characters to take on the title. After being bombarded with extra-dimensional energy emitted by a stolen device, Monica Rambeau acquired the ability to convert her body mass into and control any form of energy of the electromagnetic spectrum. Those energy forms include visible light, radio waves, electricity, X-rays, microwaves, infrared radiation, ultraviolet radiation, cosmic rays, and gamma radiation. But whenever she comes into contact with new forms of energy, such as neutrinos, Monica can mimic that energy's wavelength as well, given enough time, and she'll be able to actually transform into it. As you can imagine, there is a lot she can do with these various forms of energy: flight, speed of light travel, intangibility, invisibility, energy blast and absorption, hologram creation and appearance alteration, size alteration, power boosting, and she can even become a kind of hard solid light. Number 6. Shang-Chi. Shang-Chi is one of, if not the greatest martial artist on Earth. He was trained from birth to become the ultimate warrior. He can take on multiple opponents at once and can even defeat people much more superhumanly powerful than him. He is particularly skilled in Chinese martial arts, but his skill branches out to many more. In one case, he even worked with Spider-Man to create a new martial art based on Peter's powers. Shang-Chi also is able to manipulate Chi energy, which he can use to enhance his strength and durability, and can even detect others based on their energy, like he did when he detected the psionically masked Jean Grey. But Shang-Chi gets a much more significant power boost when he is using the 10 rings. He can use the rings as projectiles, manipulate their size, and even use them to levitate and fly. The rings grant the martial master superhuman strength, durability, speed, and stamina, and he can even manipulate energies from the rings to do many things, including projecting said energy and creating an energy-based blast. And then just to top it all off, thanks to the other side of his heritage, Shang-Chi inherited his mother's psionic abilities to communicate with his blood relatives, even the deceased ones. Number 5. Moondragon. It may come as a surprise, but Heather Douglas is actually one of the most powerful human-born telepaths in existence. She gained her power after she trained under the Shaolin monks of Titan, thanks to Thanos' father, Mentor, taking her in. Her telepathic abilities rival and surpass even those of powerful mutants like Professor X. With this power, she has been able to mentally enslave an entire planet of beings who were constantly at war with each other, bringing peace to said planet. She has been in a psionic stalemate with the Sorcerer Supreme, and she's even straight up de-lifed a clone of Thanos who, at the time, had even greater mental powers than Professor X. Her powers are so powerful in fact that they can maintain themselves subconsciously, meaning that even if she is unconscious, she will maintain the effects of said powers. A huge part of her character, even the reason for her awesome Moondragon name, comes from the fact that she is, or was, actually under the influence of an extremely powerful entity known as the Dragon of the Moon, who has been manipulating her for a long time, even initially letting Heather believe she had overcome the demon. But thanks to this dragon, she has been able to take on a dragon form where she can move faster than light, survive in space, and was super strong and durable. Number 4, Jack of Hearts. Jonathan Hart is a hero you may not have heard of. Jack Hart was the son of a brilliant scientist, a scientist that created the ridiculously efficient liquid sci-fi fuel called Zero Fluid, that in a tragic comic book backstory was exposed to Jack and gave him his awesome abilities. Due to the cellular mutation that took place after his Zero Fluid exposure, Jonathan Hart is now able to produce pink concussive energy beams and blasts from his hands and body, taking up the incredibly clever name of Jack of Hearts, apparently in honor of his father's love of card games, and not because it's actually his name, basically. His biological structure was reformatted to basically give him the superhuman starter pack abilities, but his strength specifically has been able to lift 25 tons. He has enhanced speed, stamina, healing factor, and durability, able to withstand some pretty heavy hits and survive in the vacuum of space. But in addition, thanks to a symbiote energy sump device, Jack went through another mutation which gave him the ability to think as fast as a computer can, and he can retain and retrieve stored information from the deep recesses of his brain, which is pretty cool. Number 3, Circe. Circe is a member of the Eternals, an evolutionary offshoot of humanity gifted with amazing powers and abilities to look after the human race throughout the ages. Which is similar to, but also just a smidgen bit different from the Eternals movie counterparts. As an Eternal, Circe's body is augmented by cosmic energy, and she has total mental control over her entire molecular structure, which allows her and other Eternals to be immortal, indestructible, and invulnerable to anything which isn't stronger than the cosmic energy that augmented them in the first place. Circe has enough strength to bench 20 tons, but thanks to her telekinesis, she can augment that to lift about 25. Her telekinesis also allows Circe to fly at about 760 miles per hour. She can project cosmic energy in heat, light, or concussive blasts. She has telepathy that allows her to hypnotize weak-minded fools. She can teleport, but hates it, and she is even able to project images from her mind, which is a super cool ability. Those are all the powers we don't see in the Eternals movie though, because arguably the ability that she has the most talent in is her matter transmutation ability, which allows Circe to transmute nearly any item or being into almost whatever she wishes. Number 2, Darkhawk. The coolest name for the strangest mashup of ideas. Christopher Powell was the son of a cop and a district attorney. When he witnessed his father taking a bribe from a mob boss, he stumbled upon an amulet that gave him the ability to transfer his consciousness to the Darkhawk armor. Now this ancient Shi'ar magical armor is very cool, and it gave its user quite the set of abilities. Obviously the classic superhuman strength, speed, durability, agility, and reflexes are all here in excess, but the armor allowed for armament conjuration from the extra-dimensional expanse, and could manifest mutations from Chris's body at will. The armor had glider wings that allowed him to fly on air currents, but he gained an upgrade that brought his flight to interstellar distances and speeds. Chris is able to heal from even the worst of wounds by just switching back to his human body. The armor can generate force fields, generate dark energy blasts, give its user enhanced vision, and can switch to a bunch of different modes, going transparent, doubling up its armor, and fighting with even stronger weapons. The problem for Darkhawk is that he has this very Iron Man vibe that kind of mixes with a Wolverine vibe due to his fist claws. It also mixes with a bit of a Spider-Man vibe as well, and it all just didn't really allow him to stay relevant past the 90s. And in at number 1 is Hawkeye. Okay, look. Hear me out. Yes, Clint Barton is essentially just a regular human man, but despite that, and likely because of his abilities and talents, he is considered a power level 4 according to Nick Fury's intel. Those aforementioned abilities include being a master of archery in the use of regular bows, longbows, compound bows, and crossbows, with basically perfect accuracy, able to fire multiple arrows at a single target in a few seconds. But he now also has near perfect precision with any aimed or thrown weapon. He is at the peak level of human eyesight possible. I don't know how you train that, but there you go. He is in peak athletic human condition with peak strength, endurance, and reflexes. He is an expert acrobat, tactician, and master martial artist, but listing off his abilities isn't really going to give you a proper understanding. So what has he done? In Avengers Volume 3, number 14, Hawkeye was cornered by 17 marksmen and took them all down without taking a single life. In Hawkeye Volume 4, number 1, Clint ran into a wanted criminal in a bar and took him down silently, fracturing his neck with a deck of cards. Number 10. Agent Anti-Venom. Everybody needs a good symbiote on their team, and if I was gonna pick one of them to put on my team, I think I'd be stupid to not pick Eugene Flash Thompson's Agent Venom. He is my favorite and probably the most reliable symbiotic superhero out there. The Savage Avengers have the benefit of getting the even better Agent Anti-Venom, which is basically the same thing with upgrades. So on top of the symbiotic powers awarded by the Venom symbiote, Agent Anti-Venom was also caustic to symbiotes, to the extent that prolonged physical contact will actually kill them. His touch also kills poisons and allows Flash to purge a person's body of impurities such as toxins, and diseases. But unlike the original Anti-Venom, Flash can also heal physical injuries and doesn't have the random power negation effect. Flash's past as a soldier and boxer plus all his symbiotic enhancements make him someone you just don't want to mess with. Number 9. Damon Hellstrom. As the son of the devil, it would honestly be kind of weird if Damon Hellstrom, otherwise known as Hellstorm, didn't make this list. Damon was born when the demon Satan decided to have a child with a human woman as a way of accessing even greater power. So already we're off to a less than cheerful start. But luckily, after learning of his heritage, Hellstrom decided to turn his back on his father and vowed to fight against him, even eventually slaying his father and taking lordship over the dimension of Hell. As a ruler of a dimension of Hell and son of Satan, Hellstrom has a Cambion physiology and wields crazy magical abilities, as well as commanding vast power in his own dimension, potentially meaning he can perform any magical feat. His physiology gives him super strength and durability, and due to his dark soul, he has shape-shifting and teleportation abilities as well as magical awareness. Hellstrom has also wielded a trident made of netheranium, which is a psycho-sensitive metal found only in his extra-dimensional realm, and the weapon is a medium through which magical energies can be amplified and projected. I wish I knew more about him before making this list because he's honestly kind of really cool.
At number 8, I'm putting Wolverine. As the most published comic book superhero ever, Wolverine has had the most experience out of anyone on this list. Not just because of all the things he's done, but also because of all the years that he has lived. His healing factor is so impressive that his age is extended by a great margin, making him appear nearly immortal. In fact, there have been a few times where Wolverine was entirely reduced to his adamantium-coated skeleton, and he was still walking around as if he'd just been a little banged up. But on top of his durability, he's also one of the most balanced heroes all around, which makes him a huge contender on a list about power. He's extremely agile, being quite skilled in acrobatics. He's got a very powerful offensive stat with his adamantium claws. He's also got a stealth stat since he's able to blend in as a civilian when his claws are retracted. He's got insane durability with his whole skeleton being coated in a metal only comparable to vibranium, and even if he takes a massive blow, his healing factor acts so fast and so efficiently that he's back to full health before he's even stood up. He's one of the big guns. At number 7, we have Shang-Chi. If this was a list of the best hand-to-hand combatants that the Avengers have ever had, I'd probably place Shang-Chi first. I mean, he trained Spider-Man for crying out loud. But to be fair, Shang-Chi's biggest strength mainly comes with his empowerment from the 10 rings. Not only do they give him superhuman strength and durability, but he's able to use the rings as weapons. He can use them as projectiles or at close range, and can shrink and enlarge them at will, making them perfect for entrapping his enemies. And on a list about power, it's also important to consider things like flight, which Shang-Chi also gets from the rings, because during any kind of battle, one's mobility tends to go a long way in how they approach their enemies. But even without the rings, Shang-Chi still finds crafty ways to show off his extreme power, like during the Infinity storyline when he uses Pym particles to grow the size of a dragon and takes it out without the help of the rings. At number 6, we have one of the most important members of the Avengers and my personal favorite, Iron Man. What could I say to try and convince you of Iron Man's placement on this list? Well, my favorite way of describing Iron Man's sheer power level is that it's technically uncapped. Tony Stark's biggest trait is his immense intellect, which shouldn't necessarily be considered on a list about power as a standalone ability. But when that intellect is able to produce the Iron Man suit, the War Machine suit, and every iteration of spider armor, as well as not to mention the Hulk Buster armor, it surely should be considered. So I say that his power potential doesn't have a ceiling only because if he's not the most powerful on this list right now, there's plenty of room for him to improve down the line with his inventions. But as he stands, he's still got his own AI system Jarvis, integrated into an all-powerful Iron Man armor which is outfitted with near endless ballistics and energy weaponry. And I'd argue that Iron Man has a certain level of omnipotence as well, because his systems are always tapped into external sources that support him in battle, like drones or even backup armor upgrades on the fly. Okay, at number 5 is Black Panther. T'Challa is not to be messed with, and it's not just because most of his gear is outfitted with all the vibranium anyone could ever hope for. He's also got a level of dexterity and stealth that brings his combat abilities to another level. This could be seen in the comics when he's able to take down Namor not once, but twice, or when he also finds a way to take out the Silver Surfer, which is an insanely impressive feat on its own. But what puts Black Panther above Iron Man for me is that he's got a similar intellect and employs it almost more impressively at times. He's able to create similarly ingenious pieces of technology to start, and much of the time totally on the fly. Like the one time when he creates a device on the spot that blocks Thanos' synapses in his mind, knocking him out there and then, at least for a time. But this is a big moment that shouldn't be ignored. Considering he's capable of this level of technological aptitude, and he's a superpowered being on top of it, it just gives him that extra edge over Iron Man for me. And that comes from a huge Iron Man stan. Although Black Panther is in my top 3 as well. At number 4 we have Hercules. I want to acknowledge that Ares could also easily hold this spot, but I figured that the list only had room for one Greek god. And having been teased in Thor Love and Thunder's post-credit sequence, it's looking like Hercules is set to appear in an upcoming MCU project, and it's about time. Hercules is one of the few characters that has ever been able to contend on an even keel as Thor, which I think speaks to how powerful he is in the comics. Son of the god of lightning, Zeus, Hercules is known as the god of strength, which should be enough to put him on this list to begin with. But what could also convince you would be, I don't know, that one time when he picks up all of Manhattan while facing off against Thor, or the time when he destroys the Thor clone in Civil War, which acts as a turning point for Cap's army. If that's not enough to convince you though, Hercules is also known to run at speeds above 100 miles per hour. Even though most people associate Hercules with Greek mythology, he has a very lengthy run with the Avengers and proves himself as one of their most powerful members ever. At number 3 is Nova. Being basically the protector of the cosmos, Richard Rider's Nova had to make it into the top 20. Being one of the primary members of the intergalactic law enforcement agency, Nova brings a cosmic level of power to the Avengers. And the main ability that really puts him above the rest is his power absorption, which is capable of using an enemy's power against them. And the limits of this power are yet to be truly maxed out, meaning that I'm not sure if we can even know the extent of his power level quite yet. But considering he's been able to weaponize gravity itself with this ability, I'd say there aren't even really limits at all. Of course, when he takes in power, it has to go somewhere, and it's usually emitted as a highly powerful energy beam that can be aimed at any nearby or distant targets. In prime form, he's also been known to travel at near light speeds, which is verging on speedster level. One of his most notable feats is when he sacrifices himself by trapping himself and Thanos in the Cancerverse. This just shows his immense influence and how far he'd go as a protector of not only Earth, but the cosmos as a whole. At number 2 is Gilgamesh. You know that at least one of the Eternals had to make it onto this list, so here he is. Gilgamesh doesn't have a long run as part of the Avengers, but the short time he gives to them is enough to put him nice and high up on this list. Now, most superheroes tend to have superhuman strength and land somewhere on the scale measured in the amount of tons they can lift usually, but we can basically just throw that scale in the garbage because Gilgamesh is off the charts in his strength stat. His strength level is on par with that of Hercules and Thor, only maybe being usurped by the Hulk himself. But on top of his extreme strength level, he is also capable of flight, energy blasts, and a certain level of energy manipulation, which, when all paired together, makes for a massive powerhouse who beats out many of the other members of the Avengers. Finally, at number 1 is a hero who could have arguably made the part 1 of this video, Captain Marvel. Born as a human, Carol Danvers' DNA is fused with Kree genes, thus turning her into a next level superpowered being. Being able to fly 6 times the speed of sound and having an adept energy manipulation skill, there's no wonder why Captain Marvel is considered one of the most valuable members universe to ever grace the Avengers. Whether she's destroying asteroids with a single punch or surviving an HLA energy bomb, Captain Marvel seems to be everywhere at once. And she sort of can be, given her insane speed and near omniscience with her flash precognition ability. This power allows her to anticipate events all across the cosmos from wherever she is, which is part of what makes her stand out as one of the foremost protectors of the cosmos. It's also just really helpful in anticipating the moves of her opponents before they make them. And although she does acquire this power when she's turned into binary, there are still remnants of it within her to this day.
Number 10. Miss Marvel. Miss Marvel was once Carol Danvers and is now Kamala Khan. And of course for this list we're focusing on Kamala, who was a new addition to the Avengers team in 2015, after making her first unnamed appearance only 2 years earlier in 2013 in the comics. Kamala is a huge Carol Danvers fan, which is what inspired her to take up the mantle Miss Marvel after Carol dropped it, taking up the Captain Marvel mantle instead herself. Kamala as Miss Marvel has powers which allow her to alter her body's physiology, allowing her to stretch, change size and shape, and in theory, straight up shapeshift. Her powers come from inhuman heritage, which was activated by her exposure to the Terrigen bomb. Kamala joined the team for a time during all new, all different Avengers, and remains a fan favorite hero at Marvel Comics. And to clarify before we move on to point 9, this is going to be a list of Avengers that have recently come onto the team, as opposed to new Avengers, which is kind of its own thing. There's a lot of new Avengers, so I just want to clarify that. Number 9. Wasp. Not the same Wasp who years ago was actually the leader of the Avengers for a while. Nuh-uh, we are not talking about Janet Van Dyne here, we are talking about Nadia Van Dyne, who despite her seemingly misleading name is actually the daughter of Hank Pym and his first wife, Maria Travoia. After her mother Maria was kidnapped and later killed, Nadia ended up being raised in the Red Room, considered a valuable asset due to her natural aptitude for science and academia, believed to be somewhat in part due to the fact that she was Hank's naturally born daughter. Nadia would eventually escape the Red Room and attempt to locate her father in the US, only to find out that he had recently died during a fight against Ultron. Nadia felt compelled to meet her stepmother, Janet, desiring to become the new Wasp. The two ended up getting along well, and Janet even gave Nadia her blessing to take her last name, seeing her as family. Hence, Nadia became both Nadia Van Dyne and the new Wasp, also going on to join the Avengers team.
At number 8 we have Wonder Man. Where do we begin with this guy? Well, firstly, for those of you who don't know, Wonder Man is another case where he initially fights against the Avengers before coming around and joining them. Wonder Man is essentially immortal, having been resurrected from temporary deaths multiple times and getting stronger each time, might I add. He is an ionic powered being who doesn't age and doesn't need oxygen, food, or water to survive, but that's just speaking to his invulnerability. He's also a shapeshifter with adept teleportation and martial arts abilities. He's known to be in the 100-ton strength class, putting him up there in power levels with the Sentry, the Hulk, and Thor. Oh yeah, and he can't be infected by a symbiote, which is great news for the Avengers, who would basically be done for if that happened. Some of his more impressive feats include knocking out Hercules, Namor, and Abomination, as well as holding off The Thing, and of course taking down Ultron with his bare hands. The only thing holding Wonder Man back is his inflated ego and insecurities about his powers, as well as his somewhat vague sense of right and wrong at times, but that's not much of a downside considering how powerful this Avenger is. At number 7 we have the World Breaker himself, the Incredible Hulk. Need I expound on this one? The Hulk has always been known as one of the Avengers' most valuable assets, and even with his weakness being that he lacks control over his actions, his power level alone outbalances that shortcoming by a long shot. Besides, part of what makes the Hulk so important to the team is that he's unhinged. If he actually had a conscience, it would be argued that he wouldn't exude quite as much strength at times, considering a lot of it is confused rage induced. In Marvel Comics Presents number 52, he destroys an asteroid twice the size of Earth, he tears the fabric of reality in The Incredible Hulk number 126, and during Secret Wars he holds up a mountain range on his own to protect his fellow Avengers. And as often as he causes problems for Earth, he has also protected it from cataclysmic events many times, like the time when he prevents an earthquake with his own hands. This hero is probably the strongest on the list in terms of brute fighting strength, and if if we'd made this list about 20 years ago, he'd probably be in the top 3. But these days there are just more to come that simply deliver just a little bit more than sheer brute strength. Like Hyperion, who's in our number 6 spot. Known by some as the Superman of Marvel, Hyperion has a ridiculously impressive power set and a very complex motivation for heroism. Although there are plenty of different iterations of this hero, the one most commonly known to be an Avenger originates from a recently destroyed universe. And what's more is that he has to relive this experience in his mind repeatedly due to his non-linear light-based memory. This is important to note on a list about power because it really explains why this hero puts so much into his work as a superhero, to create happier memories for him to experience in perpetuity. But an even better gauge for his powers are his feats as a hero, such as the time when he lifts Atlantis, yes the city, and destroys it single-handedly before beheading Namor in 2016 Squadron Supreme number 1. He's also got extreme speed while flying, traveling from Nevada to Sumatran and back in less than a minute. That's speed that could contend with some speedsters, and Hyperion does it while flying. At number 5 is Blue Marvel. A very underrated and underdiscussed hero given his power levels, Blue Marvel has a stint as an Avenger, and no one really talks about it. Known to be as powerful as Thor and the Hulk, Blue Marvel has redirected enormous asteroids single-handedly, as well as sending Sentry into space with one punch. But he isn't known only for his brute strength. His matter manipulation is equally powerful and impressive, giving him the ability to transmute matter at a molecular level and harness antimatter at will. This makes him an excellent support member to the Avengers as well, giving him the ability to heal the wounds of his allies. And let's be honest, a hero adept with molecular manipulation powers doesn't often also have the strength to one-shot Ultimate Hulk or 3-shot King Hyperion and contend against the Avengers after just returning from a 40-year retirement. Nor do they have Reed Richards saying that they might be 3 times smarter than Dr. Doom. But Blue Marvel does. He has all of this under his belt. There's just nobody out there quite like him. Other than maybe the guy who sits in our number 4 slot, Sentry. Although he is known to be one of the more troubled and self-sabotaging heroes in the Marvel Universe, Sentry's insane power levels and diverse power set still rank him at our number 4 slot on this list. Much like Blue Marvel, Sentry has Hulk-like strength as well as transmutation abilities, except he also deals with psionic energy as well as light manipulation. And he can also regenerate his molecules from nothing, meaning that he will always exist unless someone finds a very crafty way of combating or undoing this ability. The only caveat to all this is that Sentry has this evil alter ego called the Void, who is known to be even more powerful than he is, and is known as the being to have destroyed Asgard in the Siege storyline. And even though Sentry has struggled with mental illness causing his abilities and heroic feats to be rather inconsistent, the fact of the matter is that Sentry is one of the most powerful heroes in the universe, not just the Avengers. At number 3 we have the one and only God of Thunder, Thor. These top 3 were tough for me to rank because they're such popular and fluctuating characters in both the comics and the MCU, but it's fair to say that Thor takes a spot in the top 3 based on his insane influence on the Avengers as well as his sheer power potential. Originally known to be the only other being in the Marvel Universe to contend with the Hulk, Thor has only grown stronger over the years, with plenty of other heroes filling the gap between him and the Worldbreaker. And some of these feats that he has attained have been due to his extremely lengthy existence, having been a practicing warrior for millennia. Using his belt of strength and his hammer Mjolnir, Thor is also one of the best equipped heroes in the universe. He is powerful enough to resist the gravitational pull of a neutron star, knock out the Phoenix Force with one blow, and famously take out Mangog and Thanos in back-to-back fights. I could stand here and pretend to convince you, the real fans know that the only argument here is that maybe Thor could be placed even higher on the list. That would only knock out our number 2 spot, Scarlet Witch, and I'm not sure how I'd feel about that, because this hero is just an absolute powerhouse for the Avengers. She is the daughter of Magneto, or maybe not, as of recently, but I liked it better when she was, and she possesses an extremely dangerous and powerful set of magical abilities. Known to be able to manipulate reality on a cosmic scale, Scarlet Witch's powers have grown exponentially since her introduction in the X-Men #4 in 1964. She has famously eliminated the powers of 99% of all mutants with one whisper during the House of M storyline, which is an absolutely insane feat of power. But she's also shown that she's possibly capable of creating whole universes on command, which brings her to yet another crazy level of power. Some people might argue to put her further back on the list because of her volatility as a hero, or arguably an anti-hero, but I honestly think that her powers are just too impressive to be outweighed by her struggles to control them. In fact, I almost put her at #1, but the top spot had to go to Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange started off as a character that might not have presented as much of a powerhouse, but over time he has proven himself to be the most valuable member that the Avengers have ever had. He is capable of bending time and space on command with adept precision and can detect threats from extreme distances in space and time before they even occur. And if you take issue with this #1 placement, just think of the scale of the forces he's faced with within his own storylines. He has to protect the world from the likes of Dormammu, Nightmare, and Yurthona, among many other godlike demons. But what really makes Doctor Strange the most powerful out of all the Avengers is that he doesn't need to contend with opposition on the plane of reality that they come to him in. He is able to view the future and decide on how he wants it to play out before changing the fabric of reality to control any outcome he's faced with. The only reason that I could imagine someone might keep him from the #1 spot these days is that he's known to have been nerfed quite a bit in the last 20 years, but even today I'd still argue that his power set puts him in the top spot. At #10 we have Captain America. I know it feels weird to have Cap in the 10th spot on any list about power, but remember who he's up against. Captain America's best trait is his unmatched leadership stat, which for superheroes is a really important angle to consider. But on a list about individual power, I'd say it only goes as far as who he's actually leading and ultimately fighting alongside. But without his strategic advantage, Captain America is still an extremely powerful Avenger and beats out plenty of other contenders that didn't make the list. The combination of his impressive fighting skill and his advanced strength levels is good enough to garner attention, but of course his vibranium shield is what really brings him to another level. Vibranium is a metal that actually absorbs all energy and contains it entirely. This means that whatever the shield is hit with, the metal itself will absorb the recoil almost entirely. Not to mention, it can pack a serious punch when it's thrown and will return to Steve's hand on command. This gives Cap a huge offensive and long-range advantage when he isn't showing off his massively impressive hand-to-hand combat skills. At #9 is the one and only Spider-Man. It was tough to decide where to put Spidey on this list because he's so versatile, but he's also quite young and inexperienced. Well, at least he's supposed to be. But what really puts him at one ranking higher than the almighty Captain America are his Spidey senses and his healing factor. These two abilities really give Spidey the edge and help to define him as a more agile and crafty hero than many of the others on the list. Where Spider-Man might lack in sheer power, he makes up for in his adept precision and dexterity. And while he may not pack a huge punch in some of the more advanced combat situations that the Avengers face, he doesn't let anyone get the jump on him in any case, because he can always sense what's coming and has very quick reflexes to make the next move before his opponents even realize they'd missed him. In other words, Spider-Man often plays the role of David while his opponents play the part of Goliath. Another thing that's important to note is that his suit upgrades allow him to gain huge strength boosts, expanding his power levels to a level that may never see its limit.
#8, Spider-Man. Peter Parker as Spider-Man has of course teamed up with the Avengers before, but Miles Morales as Spider-Man is a newer addition, not just in terms of the Avengers team, but also still relatively new in terms of him existing in 616. Miles Morales is originally a Spider-Man who hails from the Ultimate Comics line originating in Earth 1610, the Ultimate Universe. He was given a new home on Earth 616 after his world had been destroyed as a result of showing kindness to and sharing food with Molecule Man during the Secret Wars event. True story. Thank goodness for pocket cheeseburgers. Miles has a power set very similar to Peter's in many ways, but also has a few unique abilities of his own. He can shock his opponents with venom blasts and can sneak up on them with his spider camouflage, which he can use to appear invisible. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to learn about even more newest additions to the Avengers we've seen in recent years, be sure to give this video a thumbs up. Number 7. Valkyrie. Valkyrie is Jane Foster, who was originally known as Thor when she joined the Avengers team the first time around. Jane ended up becoming the new Thor after Thor Odinson, the original Thor, was deemed unworthy. As the new Mighty Thor, editorially referred to at times as Lady Thor, Jane joined the Avengers team in the all-new, all-different Avengers series in 2015. Currently in the comics, Jane is no longer the Mighty Thor, but was welcomed into Asgardia by Odin, who gave her a new title and power set, making her a new Valkyrie. To clarify, I'm saying Asgardia because she was kind of like welcome to the whole world of Asgard, but she didn't go live on Asgard or anything specific like that. Currently, Valkyrie is the mantle that she uses. Being imbued with the spirit of Valkyrie Brunhilde gives Jane the strength and power set of an Asgardian warrior. In addition, there are specific powers that are also granted to Valkyries like herself. She can teleport, has depth perception, and can see ghosts, in addition to being a super strong and capable fighter. Number 6. Starbrand. I kinda miss when Brandy was just like a little Starbrand baby. But of course, this is comics and heroes can't stay babies forever. In fact, they can't even stay a baby for more than a year apparently. Especially if they're joining the Avengers, which I kinda get. Technically, the young Starbrand, baby Selby, later given the first name Brandy, was in the care of the Avengers. Not really specifically on the team, kinda sorta like their ward. But despite being one of the youngest heroes to ever be affiliated with that team, this little Starbrand also would often help the team out on missions, being so insanely powerful. Starbrand possesses the Starbrand, which grants her a great amount of basically cosmic power. She is capable of interstellar flight and flight in general, energy manipulation and projection, creating energy blasts, and technically should also be super durable and have some level of healing factor. The Starbrand's power is believed to be potentially infinite when it comes to their power levels, making Starbrand one of the most powerful members on the team, in baby form, child form, or young adult form as she currently is as of the end of issue 52 of the current 2018 Avengers series. Number 5. Ghost Rider. While Starbrand might have the greatest potential for power, and we aren't sure entirely what she's capable of just yet, Robbie Reyes is a bit more experienced when it comes to his powers. And even when he was less experienced, he actually accidentally killed one of the previous Starbrands, Kevin Connor, in Marvel Legacy. So for those reasons, I thought we should give him a bit of a boost when it comes to his ranking on this list. Robbie Reyes first appeared in the comic scene in 2014 in All New Ghost Rider issue number 1. He is an all-new Ghost Rider, just like the series claims. During a street race gone wrong, Robbie was killed and ended up possessed by the ghost who haunted the car that he was driving, becoming the new Ghost Rider. He joined up with the Avengers recently in the comics, and I think he makes a great addition to the team. I personally love Robbie Reyes, so yeah, I'm here for it. Number 4. Winter Hulk. While Jennifer Walters as She-Hulk may have joined the Avengers long ago, first joining up back in the 80s, she's gone through a lot of changes since then. One recent and major one, which also returned her to her smaller, smarter, more playful and sassy, yet still very powerful form, happened recently in Avengers comics. For a brief time, She-Hulk, then known as just Hulk, ended up becoming Winter Hulk. Winter Hulk happened as a result of Jen allowing herself to be kidnapped by the Winter Guard of Russia to try and figure out what they were up to. What devious things are they planning? In the end, they attempted to mind wipe and brainwash Hulk to turn her into one of their agents. And they kinda succeeded. Although the process was interrupted, for a brief time Jen acted as their agent, Winter Hulk. However, as Winter Hulk, Jen still managed to fight against her programming, and alert her fellow Avengers when sent to attack Namor and Atlantis. In the end, Winter Hulk was forced to absorb a ton of radiation to protect the citizens of Atlantis. She managed to discharge the gamma radiation she had absorbed safely, and as a result was returned to her original form, ultimately deciding to retire from the Avengers team after these events and return to practicing law. And now we have a new She-Hulk series that I have heard nothing but good things about. I really need to get reading my first issue. Number 3. Phoenix. While Phoenix is definitely one of the most powerful superheroes to be on the Avengers team, her history with them is a bit more lengthy than you might initially think. which is why I ranked her a little bit lower on this list than I normally would. Phoenix herself was back on the original Avengers team, the prehistoric Avengers, or the Avengers of 1 million BC. This avatar for Phoenix was known as Firehair. However, Firehair only made her first appearance even in 2017 in the comics, so she's also kinda new in a way, even though she's super old. Does that make sense? Maya Lopez, aka Echo, is the current host of the Phoenix Force and the current Phoenix, who also finds herself on the Avengers team. Her being Phoenix is new, but her being on the Avengers team is not new. She rejoined the team in 2021 as Phoenix, which is quite new, like I said, but she actually was a member of the Avengers way back in 2005, when she was using the mantle of Ronin. Still, Maya being Phoenix and being part of the Avengers altogether is quite fresh right now, despite both the Phoenix Force's history with the prehistoric team and Maya's own history with the present day team. And of course, Phoenix is one of the most powerful entities in the entire Marvel universe. So despite her being kind of a new old combo thing, we have to show respect to the blazingly brilliant and powerful Maya Lopez, aka Echo, aka Phoenix, on this list. Number 2, Cable. Nathan Summers ended up joining the Avengers team at a time when Captain America was seeking to present a show of unity. Hence, Cable ended up being on the Avengers Unity division, which was meant to bring together Avengers and X-Men after events of Avengers vs. X-Men had created tension between the two superhero groups of Earth. Series-wise, the team was known as the Uncanny Avengers, with Cable joining up as early as issue number 4. Cable is an extremely powerful telepath and telekinetic due to him being the offspring of X-Men member Cyclops and his wife at the time, Mr. Sinister created clone of Jean Grey, Madeline Pryor. Despite Maddie being his birth mother, Jean has also been like a mother to Nate after she was implanted with the memories of basically raising him, making her kind of like his telepathically retcon mom, with Maddie becoming more like a surrogate mother in terms of her relationship with Nate, formerly known to her as Baby Christopher. Oh, baby Christopher. Number 1, Avenger Prime. Avenger Prime is kinda like all of the Avengers merged together. At least, that's what the original version of this character was like. They made their first appearance in the 2013 Mighty Avengers series, but another character with that name also recently reappeared in the 2021 free comic book day Avengers and Hulk comic. They showed up in the Avengers portion of that double feature story comic. Here, Avengers Prime is the leader of the Deathlock Avengers forces, who basically stands guard at the God Quarry, seeking to watch, protect, and warn against major multiversal threats and potential chronal collapses. Presumably, this is some version of Avenger Prime that decided to stay omnipotent and bonded together. At least that's what I'm assuming. Some people are assuming different things. When we saw Avenger Prime last, or an alternate version of them if you will, they were created using a ritual which allowed the team of Mighty Avengers to bond together. Technically, Avenger Prime stands to be the most powerful of the Avengers, as they should be made up of one or more teams or rosters potentially combined together. Now, of course, some people believe that Avenger Prime is actually some sort of alternate version or some future version of Tony Stark, aka Iron Man, but we don't really know for sure yet. Whoever they are though, they definitely seem to have a lot of time, a lot of power, and a lot of resources on their hands, especially for being a shadowy figure.
Number 10, Mantis. A new addition to the Guardians team, Mantis went from being Ego's roommate in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 to becoming an Avenger, even holding Thanos down while the rest of the team tried to take the gauntlet off. Now in the comics, Mantis had to endure quite a bit before becoming an Avenger. She made her first appearance in Avengers issue 112, The Lion God Lives. Mantis was trained as a child by alien priests, section of the Kree, who thought that she was destined to be the celestial Madonna. She was killing it in martial arts, hence the nickname Mantis. Now her real name is Brant, but Mantis sounds much more fun. No offense to all the Brants out there. Those priests enhanced her mind, giving her telepathic abilities, and on her 18th birthday she was given the gift of a lifetime, when her mind was wiped and she was instead given false memories of her childhood as an orphan in Vietnam, to experience a normal life. Because that's part of the celestial Madonna route. Nothing builds that Madonna power more than some time in Vietnam. Right? And in doing so, Mantis learned to hold it down on her own quite easily. Number 9. Dr. Druid. Anthony Ludgate entered Marvel Comics in Weird Wonder Tales issue 19. He's a bit of a smarty pants, some would say. I mean, he got a degree in psychology from Harvard and then became a psychiatrist. But that wasn't enough for Anthony. He wanted to study the ancient powers of his ancestral druids. So he was studying the occult on his off time. He finally met the Ancient One who passed down a lot of tricks, and Anthony left and became Dr. Druid, assisting monster hunters, including Makari when they went against deviants. So this guy goes back quite far. He's also a little more dramatic than strange, some would say. In Avengers issue 294, he manipulated Captain America's mind so that he would be the replacement chairman. And this was right after Captain Marvel was injured. What a snake.
Number 8. Weapon H. Clayton Cortez is actually a newer addition to the Marvel landscape, but in my opinion, he is pretty cool. Clayton was a Marine who, after defecting, was subjected to Weapon X's H Division, which was basically asking the question, what would happen if we mixed the Hulk and Wolverine and made them cyborgs? H-Alpha, which was Clayton's designation, was different though. He retained more of his brain than the other subjects, and he was also not loyal to Director Stryker's cause. So, when this guy popped out of his incubation chamber, it didn't go too well for his creators. Are we surprised though? This Hulk-Wolverine hybrid has an adamantium bonded skeleton which still allows him to transform from human form to Hulk-out form. And yes, he has an almost limitless level of strength and the insane level of durability afforded to the Hulk, on top of the adamantium skeleton. And we haven't even got to the adamantium bone claws and studs, regenerative healing factor, and enhanced senses. The one who created him, Dr. Alba, suggested that Weapon H could actually end the life of every living being on this earth. That's pretty insane. Number 7. Juggernaut. The stepbrother of Charles Xavier, Cain Marko, started off on the wrong foot as a bully to his brother. So he already wasn't nice when he gained the powers of irresistible force embodiment. This basically means that once Cain begins to advance in a certain direction, it is virtually impossible to halt his movement. Tons of rocks and plasma discharge cannons have slowed his pace, but they cannot completely halt him. Only a few things have ever been able to stop Juggernaut. Thor's use of his God Blast is one of them. War Hulk with increased strength thanks to Apocalypse's grafting celestial tech to him, which allowed Hulk to increase his strength and stop the Juggernaut, is another. Cain gained this ability after bonding to the Crimson Bands of Sidorak. Sidorak being an immensely powerful entity described as both a god and a demon. The bands also granted Cain with near limitless strength and stamina and gave him the ability to summon his mystical armor at a moment's notice. When Cain was the avatar of Sidorak, these powers were boosted to even greater heights, which is just a scary thought. Number 6. Ghost Rider. If there is one thing I have learned from my time on Earth so far, it would be that you never make deals with people who look like, sound like, or call themselves the devil. There are multiple instances of this happening in the backstory of stunt motorcyclist Johnny Blaze. His mother tried to make a deal with Mephisto that would stop Johnny becoming the spirit of vengeance thanks to a family curse, and that didn't go as planned. And then, Johnny tried to make a deal with the same demon to save his surrogate father, which also did not go as planned and did not save him at all. Johnny was cursed with the power of the spirit of vengeance that inhabits his body, turning him into the Ghost Rider. While the Ghost Rider is in control, Johnny Blaze only influences its decisions to an extent as he takes the back seat, quote unquote. Doctor Strange has stated Johnny Blaze is simply a mortal and acts as a built-in safety, limiting the power of the Ghost Rider. Doctor Strange has also stated that when the demon Zarathos takes possession of the Ghost Rider's power are, for most intents and purposes, boundless and quote unquote godlike. Those powers include superhuman strength with potential limitlessness, superhuman stamina, superhuman immunity to basically all earthly physical damage, superhuman agility, regenerative healing, supernatural awareness, hellfire manipulation including infusion, projection, and constructs, firestorms, sin and soul manipulation, hell cycle symbiosis, dimensional travel, demon magic, mystical fiery chain projection, size alteration, and his key ability, the penance stare, causing any individual who stares into his eyes to see and feel every bit of pain they have ever inflicted on anyone in their entire lifetime for all eternity. Number 5. Magic. Ilyana Rasputina is a mutant sorceress who rules the demonic realm known as Limbo. She was taken to Limbo by Belasco, and in the few seconds that passed on Earth, Ilyana aged years in Limbo. Time she spent mastering different dark arts. Magik also exhibited the mutant ability to mentally control stepping discs that are connected to Limbo and allow her and others to teleport across interstellar distances, space, and time. She joined the New Mutants and she has gone on to eventually join the ranks of the X-Men, and has been mentored by Doctor Strange, advancing her magical abilities even further, which is quite a statement as she is the Sorceress Supreme in her Limbo dimension, having been taught black magic by Velasco and white magic from an alternate Aurora Monroe, and she was among those who were considered for becoming the new Sorcerer Supreme of Earth 616. Number 4. Dr. Voodoo. Jericho Drum is the master practitioner of voodoo, white magic, according to the Book of Vishanti, and he has been stated as one of the most powerful mystic practitioners on the planet, which is why it makes sense that he was the one to actually become the new Sorcerer Supreme for a while in Doctor Strange's place after the Eye of Agamotto deemed that he possesses a pure heart and a clean soul. Now, his main magical ability allows him to interact with spirits for a number of different effects. He can summon skeletons, the spirits of the dead, and manipulate zombies with his necromancy. He can manipulate biological forces like animals and trees, as well as heal others, and he has even removed Frank Castle's mouth one time, which was pretty freaky. He has a degree of pyrokinesis, can control a voodoo smoke/mist, and can manipulate and control people's souls. Now that is all on top of the normal mystical abilities he possesses through spells that were increased in potential when he was trained by Doctor Strange and when he became Sorcerer Supreme. Number 3. Dr. Doom. Victor Von Doom has been a staple villain in the worlds of Marvel Comics since 1962. But there is more to this incredibly powerful, super intelligent, and charismatic Latverian monarch. He has helped the forces of good on several occasions, even if it was for selfish ends, and has recently reformed and even become a hero. He held the power cosmic and the power of the Beyonder twice, becoming God King of Battleworld the second time. He is an incredibly capable character. Dr. Victor Von Doom was introduced to magic by his mother, but he expanded his knowledge by going through time and training with characters like Morgana Le Fay. He has proved capable of mystical blasts, force fields, ensnaring, banishing, and portals, summoning entities and demonic creatures, casting and reversing spells, teleportation, dimensional travel, healing of himself and others, time travel, power absorption, elemental manipulation, telekinesis, as well as power nullification. He also honed psionic abilities such as mind transference, hypnotism, and technopathy. He has been considered for the role of Sorcerer Supreme, and is just one of the best villains Marvel has ever created. Number 2. Doctor Strange. Dr. Stephen Strange. His magical feats are almost unmatched by any other. He is among the most adept magic user in the multiverse and has shown it many times. When he first came on the scene, and for a long while, he was so insanely powerful that he was capable of doing pretty much anything he wanted. It got to the point that Marvel even decided to depower him. He has passed a test in which he accepted death, which meant he now no longer ages and can only be de-lifed by external means, meaning he is essentially immortal. His energy blasts are capable of destroying moons and planets. You remember when I listed all the things Dr. Doom can do? Well, Strange can do all of them, probably better, and more. He has mastered the words of the Black Priest, allowing him to distort reality. He frequently calls on the divine empowerment and extra-dimensional energy of mystical and non-mystical beings in multiple dimensions to power his spells, and he can use black magic like taking the power of another entity by force of will. But he has stopped using that kind of magic, so it's whatever. He is the defender of reality and has put together so many different crazy teams, including this one. Number 1. Kang the Conqueror. Nathaniel Richards was born on the 30th century Earth of Reality 6311, where humanity never went into the Dark Ages. In this reality, after centuries of technological advancement and war, peace was finally brought to the Earth by a time traveler from Earth 616, also named Nathaniel Richards, known as the legendary Benefactor. Now, the Nathaniel Richards born to the 6311 reality is said to be a descendant of the Benefactor through Reed Richards, although he may be descended from Dr. Doom. So already we're off to a confusing start, and that's before we even get into the seemingly endless versions of him by different names and from different realities that are littered throughout Marvel Comics and appear in the 616 reality. Basically, after landing in the 40th century, Nathaniel reinvented himself as Kang the Conqueror, conquering the Earth, then the galaxy, and then setting his sight on other times and realities. Apart from his advanced physiology and exceptional mind, Kang's battle armor is produced from a rare synthetic alloy from the 40th century and responds to his subconscious thoughts. It grants him abilities including enhanced strength, durability withstanding even a nuclear strike at point-blank range, anti-gravity, video communication, time travel, concussive bolts, summoning any number of weapons which are transported to him through the time stream instantly, electric shocks, hover pads, survival kits, and body transference. He is an Avengers level threat and easily takes any of the top spots on this list.